So I want to talk about systemic racism and perspectives. And this term gets used a lot. It's a very, very trendy term, systemic racism. And in particular, people use it to refer to the conduct of the police departments in this country. Systemic racism means more than just pointing at an isolated incident, pointing to, this officer on this day engaged in violence toward this person, and that the officer was white and the citizen was black, and we think it was questionable or maybe obvious police brutality. So that's an incident that we always will investigate. And we do every time in this country. We investigate. Officers get prosecuted as they should. They get investigated, they get charged, they get tried, prosecuted, they get convicted. And that's happened in Minneapolis. The truly unjustifiable action toward George Floyd, which the entire nation saw because someone was videoing the knee of that officer on the neck of George Floyd. America saw that. That officer's been charged with murder. The other officers who stood around did nothing have also been charged. The point is, it's one thing to say, maybe we have a problem with that officer, maybe this incident justifies investigation, and we do that. But the argument of the left is there's systemic racism in police departments around this country. Systemic racism, meaning it's a system, it's a pattern, it's by design, it's a plan, it's intentional, it's carried out across the country. So we have, because people use that term so freely and it's thrown out there, we have kind of the assumption in the American political conversation, well, we're trying to get better, but we still have systemic racism. And so even the idea that any conservative, any individual wants to challenge that, wants to say, are we sure we have systemic racism versus isolated instances? Or maybe we have some police departments have a problem, but many do not. Or even only a tiny portion, a small portion of various police departments have a problem. But the answer to the left is it's systemic. It's spread through the system, every police department, every city, every officer. And it is what gives rise to and gives really motivation to these city councils who are deciding, our plan is we're just going to defund the police department and move to community justice, which, by the way, will become a talking point and maybe won't even need to be talked about very much. It'll be a huge element in the fall elections. If you think that America, tax-paying Americans and hardworking Americans, law-abiding Americans are going to sit back and watch the mayors of big cities engage in the actual defunding of police departments, and you're going to have people in those states vote for what will obviously be the utter chaos and lawlessness that will ensue. But I want to get to this systemic racism thing, because part of the problem is that you can't even discuss it, you can't even question it. The systemic racism argument is the given. If you are a leftist, it's the given. Everybody has to agree. Nobody can argue about it. No one can question it. So when people come up with data and facts that refute it, this makes the left livid, and so they attack people. There was a very great piece written in the Wall Street Journal by someone who's joined us in the show before, Heather McDonald. She wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal called "The Myth of Systemic Police Racism." It's based on data. It's based on facts. She runs through the facts that make it clear that regardless of the left-wing talking point, never will stop talking blather, the fact is the data do not support, or because data is a plural, data do not support the argument of the left that there's systemic police racism in this country. There is a crime problem in many large, low-income and majority minority communities. There's a crime problem. There is a higher crime rate in many communities, which leads to more police interaction in those communities, trying to stop the crime or prevent the crime or arrest the people committing the crime. But the actual statistics do not back up what the left is saying. And everyone who tries to make this point is ridiculed and mocked. Heather McDonald brings this data out. She had it in previous books that she wrote. She gives speeches about it. She's attacked on college campuses, not because her data is incorrect, not because she's making arguments that the data don't support, but because she's actually daring to put facts out there. She's attacked for saying, actually, the data, the very FBI data we have that shows arrests, the very Department of Justice data, does not support what the left claims is true, systemic police racism. And I want to put a comma there and say, she's proven this. Other researchers have proven this also, that the data does not support the argument that there is systemic police racism. But here's my comma. At the same time is true, I know from dear friends of mine, moms who are black, who've got black sons, and who are in black families in my community, I know. I've had many law-abiding, completely law-abiding, well-behaving, dear friends of ours talk about the fact that they are pulled over more often, especially black men, especially young black men, pulled over more often by police than their white counterparts. Questioned more often by police, stopped more often by police. I am not saying there is no racism in this country. I am not trying to claim that. I think racism as a mindset that exists, sadly, in many people, and racism that exists in the hearts and the thinking of black Americans and white Americans and Asian Americans and everybody of every background. There's a certain element of our society that carries racist thought. No law or policy is ever going to change that. I don't like it, it's ugly, but racism is not something a law can erase. We can try to look at behaviors by police officers, behaviors by any people in authority in our country, and say, we want to be very, very careful to root out racism. We want to be careful to eliminate racism in our criminal justice system and in what the police are doing. I think that you have to be able, if you want to have an honest conversation about this huge battle we're in right now, no one who defends the police, which count me in, I defend the police, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, everyone's life matters. Life matters. Everyone's life matters. I'm a defender of the police. I'm grateful for the police. I would never vote to defund the police, never support such an idiotic idea. But you can, at the same time, in the honest conversation we have to have in this country, say on the one hand, there's not this massive systemic racism in the criminal justice system because the data prove that it doesn't exist, but we still have racism. We can always work to do better. We can always, as a society, work to improve ourselves, to create that more perfect union. We can have a dialogue, a conversation. We can listen to each other. You may recall the senator from North Carolina, the black Republican senator from North Carolina, Tim Scott, talked about this on the floor of the Senate. This is a man, if you know what he looks like, he's very dignified. He said he always has a suit on. He's got a suit, a tie. He drives a nice car. And he talked 2 or 3 years ago on the floor of the Senate about the idea that it is completely, that in his own experience, his life experience, being a senator in Washington, D.C., more frequently followed by police, more frequently pulled over than his colleagues, stopped, pulled over, asked for ID, asked who he is. He talked about that in the floor of the Senate. We cannot deal with this huge challenge we're facing as a country by simply ignoring the reality that many of our fellow Americans who are black citizens of this country, our fellow Americans, say happens to them. You can't ignore that reality. And at the same time, you can't ignore that reality and say, no, the problem is just, criminal conduct and we're going to crack down. We have to all be open to the idea that, yeah, there's some racism. We always try to do better, but we cannot have a lawless society. We can't have a society in which we have just mayhem and no police in charge, no policing. We can't have that either. Americans who want the America of the dream of the founding, the Martin Luther King idea of America, where he talked about, he wanted his children to live in a country where they're judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. That's what we all should be working for. But I want to get around to where we are with the George Floyd protests. And they're not, I really hate that word protest in connection with these looters, arsonists, robbers, thieves, and murderers who rampaged this country for the last week. But where we are is a conversation again about race. There was a great contribution made to that conversation by Candace Owens this week. Candace Owens, you likely know, she's been on the show before. She's just a young black woman who, I will tell you very quickly if you don't know her story before I play this clip. It's a little lengthy clip. She had a 17-minute video which she did about all the issues arising out of the George Floyd death in Minneapolis. And she has said several times on media, it's had 70 million views, 70 million views. So A lot of people listen to what she has to say. She runs through a bunch of issues. But let me tell you how she got to where she is very quickly, because if you don't know the story, it's important to know. So Candace Owens was not particularly a political person, but she grew up in a low-income area. She grew up in New York, and she talked about in New York how so many of her friends, her neighbors, her family members, who are, she's speaking of her black, people who live in a black majority community. She said all of them, for the whole time she was growing up, talked about Donald Trump as the man, or she says he was the gold standard. He was the man. Everybody in the black community talked about what a great guy he was. We love Donald Trump because he was an icon, obviously, for decades. You know, a billionaire in New York City and did a lot of great things for people in New York City. So she talks about the idea. All the time she was growing up, she heard all of this, you know, the man, the gold standard. I want to be like Donald Trump when I grow up. The black community overwhelmingly embraced him. The moment he became the Republican candidate, or even declared his candidacy, and then when he won the primary and became the Republican candidate, she noticed as a young adult for the first time in her life that all these people who used to say he was the man, the gold standard, the great guy, are all of a sudden saying, he's a racist. Donald Trump is a racist. And she said it really made her think, what are you talking about? How could you say this? This is the same one. This is the same guy. You used to love him. And all of a sudden, because he's running as a Republican, he's racist. So she started diving into politics, first time in her life, really just launched what is now a fabulous career she has in being a spokesperson for bringing the truth of America and Republican Party values to the black community in America by speaking up about the policies of the Democrat Party that have devastated black America. This is her mission, to help more black Americans see it is the policies of the Democrat Party that have destroyed the black community and the black family in America. That's her mission. But she got started just because she observed what I just told you about, Donald Trump being called racist after being lauded for so many years. And she started doing videos, quite literally sitting around her apartment and just talking. And some of them went viral overnight. Videos talking about how the world she lives in, I can't go off on her videos, but they're fabulous. But this one she did 17 minutes long. I have a rather lengthy clip from it, not the whole 17 minutes, but a pretty healthy clip. I want you to hear what she had to say, and then we'll talk about it. This is Candace Owens.
Being a black conservative is not a trend. It is not just being a Trump supporter. It is about doing the hard work and the research and learning the things, the things behind what conservatism, the foundation of what conservatism really is, really. And I came across something in Shelby Steele's book that hit me like a truck, and it has stuck with me and it has transformed me. And I hope that when I repeat this to you, it will transform you, Black Americans, to realize that there is something very ugly and broken about our culture. And the only way we're going to fix it is if we're honest about it. So Shelby Steele was talking in his book, I believe it was White Guilt, and he was talking about something unique about the culture of Black Americans that you will not find in any other culture in America. And it is the fact that we cater to the bottom denominator of our society. We have collectively lowered our average because over the last 5 years, it has become extremely fashionable for us to martyr criminals. It's unbelievable. Not even Latinos do this. They will not martyr their criminals. They do not put the names of their criminals on shirts. They don't buy posters of their criminals. They don't get celebrities to speak out about their criminals and in defense of their criminals. They just say, you are a criminal, goodbye, right? That is just, but Black Americans were unique. And it is incredible because we dismiss people that are at the top of our communities. Bye-bye Condoleezza Rice, you're a coon. Bye-bye Larry Elder, you're a coon. Bye-bye Shelby Steele, Thomas Sowell, coons, Uncle Tom's gone. Bye, hate you. Here we are, George Floyd, you are a martyr and a hero. There is no dispute and no argument that you're going to hear from me that what Derek Chauvin did was right. There is not. And the reason why I'm not talking about Derek Chauvin is because we actually have reached a consensus in this society. Everybody agrees that what he did was wrong. Everybody is happy that he is arrested, no matter what color you are. And every single person hopes that justice is served to George Floyd's family. That is not why I'm doing this video. This is not a defense of Derek Chauvin. This is not a video to say that when you are a criminal, you deserve to die. Nope, none of that. I want to talk about martyring criminals. I want to talk about suddenly putting them on t-shirts and picket signs and marching and pretending they were the best representatives that we've had of our community. That the whole concept of racialized police brutality is a myth. Okay? All you have to do is sit down and do basic mathematics to discover that the entire narrative that we have been sold is a lie. Okay? It's a lie. There is no racially targeted police brutality against Black Americans. In fact, if you are a white American and you commit a violent crime, you have a 25% higher chance of suffering a police fatality than Black people. Now, you might come across some people that are really bad at math, and they'll say, Candace, I know that only 9 Black people were killed last year unarmed by police officers, and 19 white people were killed unarmed by police officers. But Black Americans are only 13% of the population, and white Americans are 60% of the population. So that's why. No, that's not how math works. You don't look at the numbers according to how many Black people there are in America and how many white people there are in America, because not all white people commit crimes and not all Black people commit crimes. The numbers you look at is how many police encounters Black people had versus how many police encounters white Americans had. And when you look at those numbers, you will realize that the only thing we're doing disproportionately in this country is committing crimes. Take 2018, for example, right? 13% of the population, Black Americans, accounted for 40% of all of the murders and something like 50% of all violent offenses in the country. That's not normal. We are having more encounters with police, and despite having more encounters with police, white Americans are the ones that are being killed at a higher rate, okay? That's the truth. The left thinks we're dumb, okay? And we have to stop proving them right. We have to stop taking the bait. We have to stop accepting a foolish election time narrative that is going to disappear on November 3rd. It's going to be like it never happened. The gap between Philando Castile, who, by the way, was a real victim, who I used my platform to speak out about, right? The gap between Philando Castile and George Floyd is exactly 4 years. What do you think, guys? What do you think this is really about? All they care about is power. All they want to do is destroy your neighborhoods, burn them down, shut down your businesses, and get you on government dependence. At the same time, poo-pooing you and telling you they're going to fight the big boogeyman of racism that doesn't exist as a problematic thing in this country, okay?
Candace Owens, I'm telling you, folks, I've had the pleasure of meeting her. She is just a fireball. She's full of energy, and she's just full of kind of, it's an unvarnished. She doesn't try to do a kind of a statesman-like presentation. She just sits down and tells you like it is. But she's talking about the data that I mentioned a moment ago that was written out in the Wall Street Journal and many other places about Heather McDonald, many others. Gather the data. They show there's no such thing as systemic racism with respect to policing in the Black community. There's actually a crime problem in the Black community, and we got to look at the reasons why that is. But it's not because the police pick on people who are otherwise minding their own business. It's because police are responding. They have interactions with the Black community more often because of the rate of crime. Her message in that, I mean, I don't know. She mentioned, I think I said before that we played that clip. She says 70 million times, whatever the number of times is it's been heard. This is the kind of message that should help wake everyone up, of every race, skin color, everyone, to stop and think, are we getting caught up in the narrative of the left? And let me just tell you, yes, what is happening in our country, the very vicious, unjustifiable conduct by the Minneapolis police officer who's now under arrest for murder, as are the other officers who stood around and didn't stop him. That was a bad incident. But what our country is now dealing with is it's like a mesmerism, a hypnotism. Everybody must salute. Systemic racism is real. It is very, very bad. And the only explanation of it is white privilege, white supremacy, whatever other words they want to use to criticize American culture. But we're looking at making radical changes in this country. Back to my first segment today. Radical changes in eliminating the police department, defunding the police department. I mean, people, I can tell you that these politicians are caught up in thinking, wow, I'm going to be seen as a real hero, a social justice warrior. That's me. I'm going to be seen as standing up. The end of the day is they're buying into a intentionally created, not just overreaction, isn't even the right word. The unfortunate death of George Floyd in Minneapolis was simply used by leftists who already wanted to destroy America, who already wanted to create chaos and mayhem. They had their opportunity. They used that incident as a trigger. They launched long existing organizations around this country, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, other extremist organizations. Those organizations, get the word, launch into the violence we saw. And they did it all because it's orchestrated. Let me be clear about something. You could not have all of that coordinated violence around this country overnight over that one incident. You had people in New York City, I can't remember if I play this clip for you, you had protesters who were really just criminal thugs in New York City getting into the heart of Manhattan to commit their mayhem, arson, theft, arriving in limousines. Yeah, this is not an organic response to George Floyd. And this is and his unfortunate death. This is a long plan, next step along the way in the leftist mission to take over this country, to create chaos. And what do you think is going to happen when we actually defund the police departments? We're in more chaos. You're going to have people clamoring for control. You're going to give away your liberty and everything you want to have because get control. Look what's happened to our country. I mean, we cannot get played by what the left is doing. And back to Candace Owens, her willingness to speak up and talk about actual data. She had much more data than the little portion I played and what you heard. Much more data. The systemic racism argument of the left is a lie. It's just a lie. It's not, and I say the left because it's not just Black Lives Matter. Liberal intellectuals so proud of their moral superiority over everybody else and their willingness to understand the plight of the downtrodden use that term, and it causes many, many people to fall into the, oh my gosh, I guess I ought to feel guilty because I happened to have a certain color skin. I could play more clips for you of other instances. It wasn't just that one instance I played, whatever it was, last Wednesday or Thursday, that was a group, I think it was in Baltimore, where you had a group of about 300 white protesters, but they were standing there to support Black Lives Matter, and the Black Lives Matter leader up there leading it has with his megaphone telling them what to say, and the audience gets down on their knees. The entire audience, 300 people on their knees, repeating after whatever the Black Lives Matter guy was telling him to say. I'm so sorry I was born. I apologize for my white privilege. I apologize for white supremacy. I promise to do everything I can to fix my, on and on and on and on and on. Folks, we are being worked into a frenzy, and the answer is not to get drawn in and take sides, is to reject the chaos they're trying to create. And the left understands, and I'm going to tell you something really, really important about all of this. I think the American left, and I'm talking about the leaders, the Democrat Party, the cabal that runs that party, the radical left of this country, the Marxists, the socialists, the communists, the Democrats are all in one big fat cabal together right now. They are worried because Donald Trump, despite their incessant attacks on him for 3+ years, Donald Trump produced results that all of America could see. Donald Trump, prior to the latest onslaught against him, the grotesque overreaction to the coronavirus and COVID-19, which we'll talk about tomorrow on this show with Dr. Robin Armstrong, but the left saw that Donald Trump had actually proved to more and more people in this country that the ideas of America are right. The ideas of the foundational ideas of rights from God simply because you were born, that all men are equal, that we have rights from God because we were born, that the government exists to protect those rights, that the free markets and freedom and entrepreneurship, these are the only answers that allow Americans to use those gifts. Those ideas allow Americans to flourish. We had a booming economy despite the left's relentless attacks on President Trump up until the time of the coronavirus. We had a booming economy, lowest unemployment numbers in a long time, and we had more and more Americans waking up to the fact that freedom, free markets, capitalism, and the very idea of America works. The idea works that is America. And this is what the left cannot tolerate. The American people figuring out that what the left tries to sell you, socialism, Marxism, communism, leftism, whatever you want to call it, what the left is selling you is garbage. And this is what Donald Trump helped more people recognize. So, back to George Floyd, and as Candace Owens said, as everyone in the country, there's no one in this country defending the officers involved in that hideous conduct. But back to that death, It was unfortunate, it was wrong, and I'm glad those officers have to be prosecuted, and they are going to be. But the reaction, the left orchestrates this kind of reaction to get America back onto the camps they're trying to create, back into the camps of leftists and Black Lives Matter and Antifa against the idea of America. This is what the left is doing. I think the left in this country is actually very, very frightened because Donald Trump overcame their efforts to attack him during the campaign and come up with all the Russia-Trump collusion whispering. Donald Trump overcame the effort the left made to try to bring about the Russia-Trump collusion to claim that he colluded with the Russians. And after 3 years and thousands of depositions and millions of dollars and hundreds of agents involved, the answer after all of the digging they could do under every rock there was the finding of the Mueller report. No collusion, no obstruction. This guy did nothing wrong. There was no collusion. So Donald Trump overcame that. He overcame the next effort they made, the Ukraine impeachment, complete garbage hoax story. The Democrats actually had the audacity to look the American people in the camera, in the face, and talk about accusing Trump of an impeachable offense in a conversation he had with the president of the Ukraine, claiming that he said exactly and did exactly what Joe Biden actually really said and did. And even though the Democrat-controlled House voted to impeach, he was not removed because, and it wasn't just because Republicans had the majority in the Senate, it's because most Americans could figure out the left, the Democrats are railroading this president. So back to where we are now. We have Donald Trump winning out after the attempt to falsely accuse him of collusion, winning out against the impeachment thing, and we're now turning ourselves around out of this overreaction to the coronavirus and the shutdown of our economy, which only plays to the benefit of the left. And the Democrats are looking at the fall elections. We're in June. The elections are in November, and they're seeing Trump is already reemerging from the coronavirus. They have to have something. The left that wants this Marxist, socialist, communist takeover of America, which is what the Democrat Party is. Do not delude yourself. There are really a lot of nice, moderate Republicans and only a few extremists. They have extremists who speak up, but the Democrat Party has been taken over by Marxist ideas. What their platform stands for are Marxist ideas. So you have the Democrats now in a total panic, recognizing fall elections are coming. Trump has not only shown America and the world that freedom and free markets work, he's actually showed that to Black Americans. And this is what the left is really worried about. It's why they're trying very hard to drive a racial wedge into our country, trying very hard to convince Americans, to convince our citizens of this country, Black citizens, that regardless of all the good that happened to you in the last 3 years and everything turning around and going well, don't forget, really, the Republicans are your enemy. Donald Trump is out to get you. It's a racist country. The left can only survive and gain political power by having Black America embrace what the left is trying to say. The left is trying to convince them America's a racist country, and the only way to stay safe from that racism is for you, Black American voters, to vote for the Democrat Party to protect you from the evil Republicans. And I actually think even that is not working. I think actually more and more Americans are recognizing that, again, the left is stirring things up. This is not me. I am not saying the police are perfect. I'm not saying there is no racism in America. I'm not saying we have a perfect country and have nothing to talk about. I'm saying the systemic racism argument of the left is not borne out by the facts. I'm saying that there's been no country that on the planet Earth that's been perfect. America strives to be better and better. Yes, we have police officers who need sometimes to be prosecuted. They sometimes need to be retrained. They may need to be fired. We can work on all of our problems. But the left is telling you, throw out the baby with the bathwater. Throw out the whole idea of America because of the George Floyd incident. That's what the left is telling you, and that's what America has to say. No, we're going to hang in there with the idea of America, the goodness of America, and we're not going to be played and duped by the left. One last thing. It's really interesting that Candace Owens, I have one more clip from Matt the Wonderful to show you that we had Candace Owens made some reference to how, the left was trying to, that once they speak, everyone better just salute to them. All this kneeling in front of I mentioned the situation in Baltimore, other incidents. I didn't even play the one about the military officers, military men in our military on their knees at the demand of the Black Lives Matter people. But I want to show you the most bootlicking, artificial, absurd thing that Nancy Pelosi led on the floor of the House. This is the floor of the United States Congress. Pelosi and her gang. Let me show you. Okay, these goofballs. Okay, actually stop the camera right there, if you would, for 1 second. Can you freeze it? Okay, this is the House floor. And this is, okay, maybe they're not on the House floor. There's someplace in Washington, I thought it was a House floor. But the point is, Nancy Pelosi led this little charade, this little, freak show of having these members of Congress, and Schumer is there too, the senator, on their knee. They all took a knee for 9 minutes, the amount of time that the officer in Minneapolis had his knee on George Floyd's neck. So they did a 9-minute silent protest. I want to point out 3 things about it. One is, this is utter and pure theatrical pandering. Utter, pure theatrical pandering. Absurdity. Number 2, all of them have on, as you can see, those brightly colored with the scarves, and those are symbolic of trying to send a message of an affinity, a connection to African Americans. It's a pattern in those scarves that's supposed to symbolize Africa. So they've got this African American scarves on. Number 3. The person, I couldn't get the clip, but you see where Nancy Pelosi's in the red in the front. So just slightly to the left, in the back of her, there's a woman. I don't know who that is. What's so dang funny is you watch the whole thing. She's texting on her cell phone. She's playing with her cell phone this alleged 9 minutes. You can see her in it. And last one is just kind of funny. But I guess Jerry Nadler wasn't about to do the knee thing. He's going to stand up and do it. But I'm showing you this to say this is utter, pure, 100% pandering to Black Americans. Look, we'll get on our knees. We'll prove to you. This does nothing to solve anything except, they're all into imagery and trying to show America how much they care. People, we're going to be talking about this a lot, and I may someday really come in with a bunch of charts and numbers to tell you, but please read the articles linked on our website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage, under shows, drop down, list of links. You can read the Heather McDonald piece in Wall Street Journal. You can read her books. You can read other sources. The argument that there is systemic racism in the administration of the criminal justice system in America is hogwash, and we better start calling that. Larry Elder, by the way, had a great clip. I did not have time to do everything I wanted to do in this, but Larry Elder had a great clip. Same thing in an interview. He was talking about that he uses a synonym for hogwash, I won't say on air, but he's saying complete garbage and this is just like last couple days. Ran out of time to play his clip because I thought Candace was more powerful.